Hello everyone, this is part 5 of What If Naruto and Ino was detectives, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Ino didn't even try to hide it. Not that she could have anyway, since his picture was right there on the screen. Instead, she pushed her questionnaire, still open to page 3, to the side so he'd know this was a tit for tat kind of invasion of privacy. As opposed to just a plain ordinary invasion. You lived in England for 3 years, she commented. When your father was stationed there. You run a 6-minute mile, he counted. While listening to Disturbed. She was outdone by the sergeant. As she was thinking of something to say. Your mother and father were both cops. Frowning, she swiveled around in the chair. That wasn't on the questionnaire. No, but it was in your personnel file. His gaze drifted to her clothes, and her legs. Nice skirt. Ino was sure her frown deepened. Is that a ploy to get me to forget you were in my file? No, it's a ploy to let you off the hook for snooping in mine. He let a small black velvet box in her lap, right on her skirt. If you want to know something about me, Yamanaka, just ask. She would have questioned him about that personal leave, but the box suddenly captured her complete attention. It was the right size and the right shape. Well, depending on one's perspective, it was right. It was not so right from her perspective. Is that what I think it is? It is, if you think it's an engagement ring. He proceeded to fix his communicator under his collar. We need it for the announcement. Okay, so those 2 simple words, engagement ring, shouldn't have sent her stomach into a tailspin, but they did. Geez, it was such a girl reaction. And for nothing, since it was all show anyway. Ino opened the box as if it were live explosives and came face to face not with some gaudy lifestyle statement but rather a tastefully delicate diamond set in beautifully etched gold. Definitely a wow. It looks real, she mumbled while tracing the gold band with her forefinger. It is. It belonged to my mother, replied the spiky blonde male. Oh, she's his mother's. Could this possibly get any more uncomfortable? I can't wear something like that. Ino shook her head. Her long platinum blonde locks swayed from side to side as she shook her head. Sure you can. Well, provided it fits. He took it from the box and slipped it onto her finger. No fanfare. No awkward pause to ponder the moment. Certainly no romantic words or gazes. It fit. Okay, let's go. He ordered. He would have probably been out the door if his phone hadn't rung. Ino grabbed her purse while he answered it. As she moved, the meager sunlight slanting through the windows caught the facets of the diamond and sent a rainbow dancing around the room. She turned the ring around so it wouldn't happen again. She needed rainbows about as much as she needed a real engagement to Uzumaki Naruto. Did he? She heard Naruto asked his caller. But it wasn't the usual inquiry. Like the ring box, it snared Ino's attention and caused her to tune into his conversation. No change in plans, he continued. He hung up and looked at her. Guess where Tomiyama's headed to? Perfect match. Ino repeated the words and took out the questioning inflection. Of course, that's where Tomiyama would go. He wanted answers as to why Sasori had brought him into this investigation. And that meant if they hurried, they had the opportunity to hear what Sasori was saying to his shrink. A way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Naruto paused and combed his gaze over her. Are you sure he won't recognize you? Positive. Well, not positive, exactly. She had no idea if Sakura had ever shown Tomiyama her photo, but she couldn't let a mere possibility hold her back now. If Kabuto was at work, it would be the first time they'd have their 3 primary suspects under the same roof. It was perhaps the break they'd been looking for. Or maybe it would be the very confrontation to make a Kerr snap. Ino checked her primary and backup weapon to make sure she was ready. As they'd planned on the trip over, Ino lured the receptionist from her desk with a bogus emergency request for her to show her the location of the ladies' room. Naruto used the ploy to walk past the clients who were filling out questionnaires so he could slip unannounced into the hall that led to Sasori's office. Since Dr. Tomiyama wasn't around, that meant he was probably in there with Sasori. Along the way, Naruto looked for the security guard and cameras to make sure he hadn't missed one. No guard today, and the only he spotted was the one in the reception area. It had obviously supplied the photo for the newspaper article and could still possibly be monitoring the hall. So he plastered a silly grin on his face while he was trying to eavesdrop. Best to keep up the facade of the happily engaged man. Unlike Tomiyama, who didn't sound happy at all. The man was practically shouting. Naruto heard him when he was still several yards from Sasori's office door. Not a very shrink-like behavior. Rather, Tomiyama seemed to be in the middle of a Prozac-required moment. But why even mention my name? Tomiyama snarled. Thankfully they'd left the door slightly ajar. Naruto saw Sasori shake his head. I'm not sure I did. Sasori replied. But you must have. What the hell, Sasori, these people think you might know something about those two shootings. Why would you purposely let them believe you were unstable by telling them you were in therapy? Another head shake. This one more frantic than the first. I swear, I don't think your name even came up in the conversation. And they don't suspect me. They can't. They said their visit was just routine. The red-haired male responded. Ino emerged from the other end of the hall, which meant she'd found a way to the office without going back past the receptionist. She puckered her lips in a shush gesture and quietly walked to him. One glance at the camera in the reception room, and she stepped into Naruto's arms. But she didn't just step. She immediately launched into her lover's pose. She pressed her body against Naruto's and brushed a kiss on his jaw. Routine. Tomiyama repeated. There's nothing routine about a police interrogation. Please tell me your lawyer was here when you spoke to them. The doctor's eyes were tight shut. No. Sasori paled a little. I didn't think it was necessary. Well, from now on, it is. I can't afford to have my name dragged through the mud again. After delivering a terse goodbye, Tomiyama turned and stormed out. He paused when he spotted Naruto and gave him only a dismissive glance. Tomiyama might have done the same to Ino if she hadn't buried her face against Naruto's en. Definitely not good. Though you said he wouldn't recognize you. Naruto whispered when Tomiyama was out of earshot. She shook her head. He didn't. Which of course, didn't answer his question at all. Why are you here? Sasori asked. He was staring at them through the now fully opened door. We'd like to talk to you. Naruto made sure he grinned. Ino did her part by sliding her body against his. Well, it was more than just a slide. She hooked her fingers onto his belt, and into the waist of his pants. We have great news, she said by adding a supposedly excited tone in her statement. Sasori mumbled something indistinguishable, sighed and shoved both his hands through his hair. Give me a couple of minutes. And to make sure he had that time to himself, he shut the door. Naruto clicked off the communicator, checked to make sure hers was off as well. And looked down at her. Put your hands in my pants this time, and I'll take you where you stand. Ino didn't look quite as shocked as he'd hoped. In fact, she didn't look shocked at all. She looked, well, interested, and a little bit disgusted with herself for showing that interest. Naruto knew exactly how she felt. We're in trouble here, Uzumaki, she added a shake of her head to his disgusted expression. Because I swear that sounded more like foreplay than a threat. He fought hard, to hold on to what little composure he had left. I really didn't need to hear that, okay. You're right. Another headshake. She huffed and glanced at Sasori's closed door. Like Naruto, she was probably hoping the man would open it soon. It might save the both of them from doing something they'd almost certainly regret. Besides, it's just all this forced intimacy that's making us think like this, she mumbled. She even repeated a slightly different variation of it as if trying to convince herself. Again, Naruto knew exactly how she felt. We just have to remember that the kissing and touching are fake, she concluded. But Naruto wasn't ready to conclude things just yet. He had one point of contention left. Including the part where you put your hand in my pants. Would I do something like that just for amusement? But she waved him off. Don't answer that for your own sanity. Let's just say, everything, and I mean everything, we've done for the past couple of days has been an act. Ino put on the best fake smile she could manage, and while easing her right hand to her slide holster, she flashed her engagement ring to Sasori. Naruto and I are getting married. She added some excitement to her tone, as well, and she didn't totally have to fake that part. There was excitement racing through her all right, and it wasn't all related to that kiss Naruto had just laid on her. There was something downright spooky about the way Sasori was acting. Was the man about to go psycho on them? Naruto must have considered that as well because he too adjusted his position so it would be easier for him to head to his weapon. Congratulations are in order, Sasori finally said after a silence that was too long and too much uncomfortable. Come this way, we'll celebrate. He continued. Ino didn't relax yet. Hopefully, celebrating was all he had in mind. She stayed side by side with Naruto as they started down the hall toward the reception area. Say, wasn't that Dr. Tomiyama who just left your office? Naruto asked, sounding remarkably casual. There was nothing casual, however, about Sasori's response. From over his shoulder, he gave Naruto a chilly, yes. Ino ignored the frosty tone since they needed more info from him that solo affirmative. Wow, he's practically a local celebrity. I'm in therapy, you know. In fact, my therapist thinks I've gone off deep end by getting engaged to Naruto. But I know it's the right thing to do. That's why we don't want to wait. She paused only long enough to draw breath. Wonder what Dr. Tomiyama would have to say about that. It was a weak attempt to get Sasori to open up. And an unsuccessful one. He didn't say a word about therapy or Tomiyama. But his silence told her loads. That shouting session with Tomiyama had upset him, no doubt about it, but he was keeping it inside for the most part. No fists through walls. No profanity. A still waters run deep kind of person. So how would a man like that would he gun down happy brides and grooms because his own fiancée had crushed his hopes of having an equally happy life? If so, how could Naruto and she stop him from trying to again? As those questions ran through her head, Sasori paused at one of the doors. Knocked once. And opened it. Kabuto was seated at a desk littered with computers and other equipment. We need champagne, Sasori advised him. Meet us in reception. Ino's gaze connected with Kabuto's. His disapproving gaze. She made a mental note not to sample the champagne in case he decided to poison it. Something tells me they've done this before, Naruto muttered to her as they watched Sasori assemble an impromptu celebration. Their host motioned for the 4 other clients and the receptionist to join them. Which they eventually did. The clients put their questionnaires aside. Kabuto appeared with the champagne and a stack of plastic fluted glasses. Sasori popped the cork and began to pour. So a lot of your matched couples get engaged? Naruto asked Sasori. He lifted a shoulder. Some. Ino pressed for more. I'll bet you keep press releases and such of your success stories. Not really. And with that, Sasori stepped away to pour more champagne. Okay, what's wrong with this picture? She heard Naruto whisper. He slipped his arm around her and launched into a mock cuddling session so they could continue the discussion without being overheard. The clients, Ino immediately offered. I was alone in here the day I did my questionnaire. How about you? Me and one very old guy. Theses people weren't old or even socially desperate looking. They were young and practically buzzing with energy. Ino bit off a groan. They don't appear to be drunk or high, so that probably means they read the article in the newspaper. Adrenaline junkies, Naruto added. A moment later, one of the female clients confirmed their suspicion. Ino heard her talking almost breathlessly about the possible link to the sniper. Isn't it exciting? She heard the other girl say. Great. Sickos. Just what they didn't need to blend with the rifle-firing sicko they already had. However, it did give Ino something else to consider. The shootings had perhaps boosted business. A business that had recently been sagging. Sasori couldn't have been unhappy about that particular side effect, but was he smart enough, calculating enough, to have known it would happen? Because Ino had her attention on the group, she didn't miss the nudge Kabuto gave his boss. Sasori turned, aiming his gaze in the direction of the reception doorway. The still waters became a little turbulent. Ino followed his narrowed gaze to a tall, attractive redhead. A woman she recognized because she'd street USD her file and accompanying photos. Hisagi Karen. I see her, Naruto whispered. Just the person we've been looking for. From the look on Sasori's face, he didn't feel the same. He handed off the champagne bottle to Kabuto, and whispered something terse and then stormed straight for the woman. Fortunately, one of the other clients stopped him, but the diversion wouldn't last long. Ino could tell from the look in Sasori's eyes that one way or another, he intended to head Karen out of here. We'll intervene and talk to her, Naruto insisted. Something tells me she won't go for the, let's be gal pals ploy. You need to put some moves on her before Sasori whisks her away, Ino suggested. Naruto's eyebrow lifted. Moves. She nodded. Trust me, you've got some good ones. Great ones, in fact. The kiss had proven that. He didn't seem flattered. I don't guess Karen will consider those moves bottom-feeding gestures since I just announced my engagement to you. Let's hope not. You occupy her, and I'll take care of Sasori. Maybe I can put him in a more talkative mood and learn names of any recently engaged perfect match couples. Naruto caught her arm when she tried to step away. Please tell me you're not going to rile him enough so he'll come after you. Ino tried to look offended. You think I'd do that? Yeah, I do, he said without hesitation. If it wouldn't have blown the lovebird facade, she would have scowled at him. Are you saying divide and conquer is not a good idea? Several muscles stirred in his jaw, a definite sign he agreed with her plan but probably wouldn't approve of her methods. You've got 10 minutes max, he finally said. Get everything you can from him. I'll do the same to Karen. Just don't shake things too much, okay? This time, it was Ino who stopped. I'll say the same to you. Karen's the one with a hostile history, not Sasori. In fact, this divide and conquer investigative approach suddenly didn't seem like a good idea. Even more, Ino didn't want to explore why it occurred to her that it wasn't good. She was worried about Naruto. A man who could clearly take care of himself. Are you about to quote regulations about approaching a potentially violent suspect without proper backup? Naruto asked. You wish. He stared at her several long seconds, and cursed. It's about that kiss. She nodded. Probably. But when she repeated that to herself, it didn't seem so much like a probably as a definitely. Praying she was wrong, Ino turned to head Sasori off at the pass. Naruto made it to Karen before Sasori did. Thanks to Ino, she latched onto Sasori and somehow brought him to a stop. Who knows what she was saying to him, but she seemed to have captured his attention. Karen offered him a tentative smile when Naruto approached her. The smile vanished when she glanced in Ino and Sasori's directions. Namikaze Minato. He extended his hand, and she shook it. Not a delicate GS, either. She could probably hold her own in an arm wrestling competition. Hisagi Karen. She slid her gaze over him and up. I haven't seen you here before. It was almost certainly a lie. She'd been watching the place the night of the icebreaker. She moved slightly to the side, probably so she could keep her eye on Sasori. He did the same, angling his body so he could watch Ino. Since she was the only platinum blonde in the room, she made a great visual target. The skirt helped, too. She had the best pair of legs in the room. Maybe the world. And maybe he was still recovering from the effects of that kiss, because everything about her suddenly seemed damn incredible. Thankfully, she'd probably do something to rile him before the night was over. That would get his mind back to where it belonged. So you know everyone here? Naruto asked Karen. Not exactly chit-chat, either. It was an opening to bring the subject around to Sasori, the man who was glancing in her direction as much as she was glancing in his. No. Just Kabuto and Sasori. Naruto skipped right past the Kabuto part and went for the jugular. Sasori's a friend of yours. She gave an unnecessary adjustment to her gold hoop earring. Something like that. In other words, nothing like that. She was either Sasori's former, present or even wannabe lover. With the way she kept eyeing Ino, it was highly likely that it wasn't the latter. Interesting. How about you? She asked. Are you a new client, or are you with someone? I'm with my fiancé, Ino. He pointed to Ino but made sure he only showed minimal interest in the woman whom he'd supposedly asked to be his wife. Old flames reunited thanks to perfect match. Things happened pretty fast between us. And he let Karen fill in the blanks. Maybe she'd think he was having second thoughts. Or maybe she'd just think he was a bottom feeder. Either way, she didn't seem turned off with the idea of an engaged man chatting her up. But then, maybe she was trying to make Sasori jealous. Or something. There were a lot of dynamics going on in the room, and not all of them were limited to Sasori and Karen. Some of them were obviously happening between Ino and him. Since Naruto could feel his self-imposed time limit ticking away, he took a pen from the receptionist's desk and passed it to Karen. He discreetly put out his hand, palm up. In case things don't work out with Sasori, or Ino, why don't you give me a number where I can reach you? I'd like to give you a call sometime. That got Karen's attention. Man, did it. She gave him several more once-overs, not exactly carnal ones, either. There was some disgust, some loathing, even a hot flash of anger in her eyes. That's why it surprised Naruto when she scribbled some numbers on his hand. That was it. No sultry invitations, no warm goodbyes. No explanations as to why she'd give a man her number when she obviously disliked him. If you'll excuse me, I need to speak with Sasori. Karen tossed the pen back on the desk and stepped away. Sasori moved toward the redhead at the same time he left Ino and walked toward her. Sasori said something. Something harsh, judging from the way she reacted. She looked as if the man had slapped her. Then, she angled her eyes in Ino and Naruto's direction. Sasori's gaze followed. Oh, yeah. Sasori was definitely suspicious of them, and their latest round of unofficial questioning had probably made it worse. Karen gave Sasori a not-so-friendly glower, turned on her heel and headed for the door. Sasori aimed a similar facial expression at them and went in the opposite direction toward his office. Should we follow one of them? Ino asked in a whisper. Not with that camera looming over us, we've already piqued their interest too much for one night. Way too much. Did you learn anything new? No, he's not as flirtatious or chatty as Kabuto. Ino glanced around the room. Speaking of the devil, where is he? He left not long after you started talking to Sasori. She made a sound to indicate she didn't care for that. Neither did Naruto. Maybe we should follow him instead, she suggested. He went in the same direction as Sasori. Besides, we have this. Making sure he was out of the camera angle, Naruto flashed the number that Karen had given him. She blinked. You got her number that fast? Maybe. It could be a fake. Yeah, right. It's not a fake. Naruto wasn't sure if he should be complimented by that, but unfortunately it felt like a compliment. So what's the deal between Sasori and her? Ino asked. Are they involved? That'd be my guess. It's also my guess that one or both isn't too happy about that. Sasori, maybe. It might explain why he had the guard here the night of the icebreaker. Maybe he wanted to keep her away from the place. It's possible. Sasori certainly wasn't happy to see her. I'll call her tomorrow and see if I can arrange to meet her somewhere. With proper backup, correct? Ino whispered. Since it didn't sound remotely sarcastic, he stared at her. Why this sudden fixation with backup? She dismissed it with a wave of her hand. I don't know. There's this little buzz in the back of my head. It's making me antsy. Then obviously it's a good time for us to get out of here. We'll come back tomorrow and invite him to the wedding. After he called Karen, of course. If he got lucky, that number would be real so he could continue the discussion. They went out the door. Not alone, either. Two other clients were right behind them, and the woman was still chattering about Perfect Match's possible connection to the sniper. If the sniper had indeed been inside that reception room and heard her, it would have no doubt made him or her nervous. Or maybe not. Maybe that's exactly what the nutcase wanted. Publicity. Recognition. A moment in the spotlight, even if that moment meant people s. All four of them headed toward the parking lot. Unlike the night of the mixer, Naruto hadn't managed to get a decent parking spot. They were almost a full block away. In the dark. So did you learn anything new when you talked to Karen? Ino whispered, presumably so that the couple behind them wouldn't hear. Like maybe, how many eyelashes she had. You probably had a chance to count them when she was fluttering them at you. Naruto geared up to give her a smart-ass comeback, if it not for the glint of movement he saw. The glint he caught out of the corner of his eye. But it was too late. The shot rang out before he could get Ino out of the way. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.